Now, before we get into our thoughts and talk about Agatha all along, I do want to just briefly talk about the creation of this series and sort of where it comes from and ultimately how it came to be. As I think most people listening know, this is a spinoff of WandaVision, which was the first Marvel Studios Disney Plus series that premiered back in 2021. We reviewed every episode of that series, and instantly Catherine Hahn's Agatha became a clear standout from that show. She was one of the most beloved aspects of that series, and they greenlit this series at a time where Marvel Studios was actively creating a lot of new material in terms of what the Disney Plus original shows were going to be. Now we know that they've sort of pulled back on that initiative, but they first announced this back in November of 2021, and Jack Schaefer, who was the showrunner, quote unquote, for WandaVision, was revealed to be directing episodes for this series and ultimately was hired as the showrunner as well. Wanted to start off and ask you, in terms of just like the nature and the idea of spinoffs, this is not a new concept. Obviously, television shows do it all the time. And WandaVision, I think for a lot of people, is their most successful Disney Plus series thus far. But what were your levels of excitement for this show? Were you particularly looking forward to it, or just considering where things have been over the past couple of years, somewhat shaky ground? Were you hesitant coming into the show, knowing that it was just going to be sort of another addition on top of, I guess, the narrative that's just been developing about these Disney Plus original series?
I'd say probably somewhere in the middle. I think if it was any other, most other shows, Disney Plus shows, if it was something else, I definitely would have been like not excited for it at all, not interested in it at all. But I think Agatha does have something different where WandaVision is one of his most successful shows. It does have something there. And it's like, and Catherine Hahn being a pretty interesting part of that show, did have something there. But I think losing the trust of other Disney Plus shows that failed to reach the mark, that failed to reach what I wanted it to be, definitely made me go, I mean, I guess Agatha all along is coming. You know what I mean? Like, I guess it's coming out, and I guess I'll watch it. It definitely took away from the excitement I would have had some of those other shows been better. If this show had come out right after WandaVision, let's do it. You know what I'm saying? I'd be like, heck yeah, I'm pretty excited for this. But again, because of that loss of trust in between that time for all those other Disney Plus shows, I was like, here we go, another 8 episode, 6 episode show, however many episodes it is, 6 episode show, that we're going to end up not caring about and falling by the wayside. So I think I was somewhere in the middle between, again, losing some of that trust for other Disney Plus shows and somewhat a little bit being like, Catherine Hahn, her own TV show, Agatha, I really like that character, I really like Catherine Hahn, let's see what they can do.
It's amazing how quickly things can change, because when this show was announced, November of 2021, that was still the first year of the Disney Plus original series. And by that point, we had gotten WandaVision, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Loki. Those weren't all the most successful shows ever, but there was still a lot to be excited about, especially after Loki. It was like, okay, I see where this could be a really viable opportunity to tell more stories in long form television as opposed to theatrical films. But then 2022 happened, 2023 happened. We got the shows that we got: Moon Knight, Secret Invasion, She-Hulk, and it was just like, oh, wait a second. We should backpedal and take the foot off the gas immediately. And that's what they're telling us that they're doing. But they did greenlight this show, still sort of operating out of the pretense and the idea that they need to create more. I think it's fortunate enough that they were able to pretty much reassemble a lot of the team from WandaVision for this show, because that is a really successful series for them, and a lot of people regard it as the best thing that they've done on the Disney Plus side of things. So that is like the one saving grace. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that the past 2 years didn't really just beat me down and ultimately take away any enthusiasm that I might have had about this show, because that's just the reality of it. Like, I had no excitement for it, even knowing all those things were true, that most of the WandaVision cast and crew were coming back, knowing that Catherine Hahn was going to get her own series. It just doesn't matter, for me at this point, just considering how things ultimately developed over the course of the past couple of years. But always still going to give it an opportunity to shine and hopefully do what it needs to do to win people over and be a successful series. But let's go ahead and dive into our thoughts and reactions to these first 2 episodes. This will be a 9-episode series, and they debuted the first 2 episodes this week. Episode 1 is entitled Seekest Thou the Road, and episode 2 is titled Circle Sown the Fates / Unlock Thy Hidden Gate. So before we dive into spoilers and before we talk about the details of everything that occurred in this 2-episode premiere, what were your overall, just big picture, non-spoiler thoughts about the 2-episode premiere of Agatha All Along?
The devil's in the details. Man, man, we talked about it. I was again kind of in the middle, not really excited for this show into what it was going to be, but I've been pleasantly surprised with these first two episodes that feel pretty good to me. Agatha all along, I think, has a something really cool about it that a lot of other MCU projects don't get, in that Agatha, this character, Agatha Harkness, she has not had like her own comic run really, or like she hasn't been able, yeah, she hasn't had enough about her for us to be like, okay, what does this comic say about her? What is this thing doing about her? And instead, there's an opportunity here to create a bunch of new concepts and ideas and storylines under Agatha Harkness, and I think that's a definitely a benefit in this show. And I can even feel it in watching it, that this TV show both has a little bit of DNA coming from the backs of WandaVision, which again, pretty good TV show, and being able to do some new things that we've never seen before. So when you watch an episode, you're not going, "Ooh, what's that from? Ooh, what is this thing? What is that thing?" Instead, there's a lot of mystery here that I feel like I'm uncovering that I don't have to think too hard about. I can kind of just enjoy, and I've enjoyed that as I've been watching these first two episodes of Agatha all along. Agatha Harkness is, or Catherine Hahn playing Agatha, is really cool. The first episode is definitely very very mystery what's happening here, even though we kind of understand, but it's cool to unravel. And then episode two has just been like, again, a fun continuation of what this story might end up being. So again, I've been pleasantly surprised with what I've gotten so far. I think it's funny. I've laughed. There's a couple moments that are dark and creepy that have been kind of cool. Like, whoa, I like the way that energy feels there. It is Halloween season. It feels like they're definitely playing to Halloween season very well. It's very witchy, as you would expect it to be. But so far, I don't have too many complaints. There's a couple timing things that are weird for me, like acting timing things. I don't know how I feel about, but other than that, man, I've been pleasantly surprised with these first two episodes, and I can't wait to see that. Hopefully, they can continue this. Them having 9 episodes is a W already. Like, yeah, give us 9, please. So I'm glad. I would say I am glad that they did the first two. That's a very smart play that they did the first two episodes. I can't even imagine if they left with episode one. I'd be like, okay, but what else? You know what I mean? I'm glad they gave us the first two. I think that was a smart move on their part. But yeah, we'll see what episodes 3 and on hold for us. But I'm liking what I'm seeing so far.
I remember in WandaVision, I believe it was the penultimate episode, the previously on episode. The way that it started was this flashback to Catherine Hahn, her being Agatha, and overcoming this coven of witches. It was a really really impressive opening to that episode. After we had the reveal that it was Agatha all along, and she was truly the one pulling the strings. And that was also another piece of that show that made me excited about exploring the character more. And so the idea of coming now to this series and opening this up to a new dimension of the MCU that we haven't really explored, whereas witches and covens, and there's a lot of history there, thousands of years of history, and you're dealing with small towns and previous rivals and all sorts of just magical things. It's a cool concept. There's always a ton of potential there, and it's also sort of appropriate because it leans into just like the idea of like Disney's brand and what they've built
Mm-hmm.
over the years, having witches and princesses and magic. That's just something that's just very ingrained in our heads. And so when you see a show like this, it's like, oh yeah, this feels like a Disney branded show. And I think that that's a positive thing. And after viewing these first two episodes, I think it's off to a solid start. I won't really say much more there just because a lot of their series start off pretty good. You know, I
Yeah,
think that they always
exactly.
have pretty strong starts. And
Exactly.
once we get the remaining episodes, that's where it truly reveals itself. Like there's a systemic problem here. So I'm just going to reserve really most of my thoughts and expectations until we obviously progress throughout the show. We're going to talk about it each and every week, but it's a solid start. It's good. It certainly brings you back to this world, this Westview or Westview adjacent world. It does a pretty good job at reestablishing Agatha, where she's been, what she's been up to since we saw her in WandaVision, and then ultimately what the motivation of these characters are for this series. I think it did what it needed to do in that respect. I think that these two episodes could have been one episode. I don't think that it
Mm-hmm.
needed to be split into two. This feels like just really long premiere as opposed to two separate
Yeah.
episodes, because where it cuts off in the first episode is just strange, and they could have just made it like a 70-minute premiere episode, but I think, they want to hit that 9, so there we are. But ultimately it was cool. It's a solid start, and I like the world, I like the costumes, I like the set design and the feel and tone of what they established here. Hopefully the characters, we can grow to be closer to them, have really good relationships, and understand where they're coming from and what their motivations are. Get some good comedy, get some good action, get some different things that we just haven't seen before. Hopefully that's the case with the rest of the series. But folks, with all of that being said, if you've not seen these first 2 episodes of Agatha All Along, we're going to go ahead and spoil that stuff right now. So you should go watch those on Disney Plus, and then come back and finish out the rest of our conversation. And let's just start here. Really, this show picks up where we last saw Agatha, and at the end of WandaVision, Wanda put her spell on her, basically confined her to Westview, and now we're seeing sort of the repercussions of that. 3 years later, pretty much in real time, she is still stuck in this spell. And we open up the series, and basically it's a new television series, really in the spirit of what WandaVision did, in terms of focusing on a different sitcom and different sitcom era each and every week. Now we're in a true detective style crime mystery titled Agnes of Westview. And that's pretty much where Agatha has been this entire time, just unpacking these mysteries that are happening within the town of Westview. And initially, she's not really aware of what's happening here until ultimately she does come to realize, oh, yeah, I've been under a spell for like the past 3 years because Wanda, confined me here to this town. What did you think about sort of that callback, I think, to WandaVision? Because it immediately sort of brought back the memories of, oh, we're going to get a new era. We're going to get a new episode, a new sort of sitcom style each and every week with WandaVision, and really just travel the course of television history. And now with Agatha All Along, they're doing something similar here and kind of entering into the new millennium of, I guess, quote unquote, prestige TV, where we've gotten a ton of true crime mysteries and crime dramas
Mm-hmm.
over the past 10 or 15 years or so.
I thought it was a pretty cool start to the episode just because it was something that felt different for the MCU. I was like, whoa, what is happening here? Everything felt darker, in I think in all the best ways. Like you said, we have so many true crime shows. It's very much the opening credits were True Detective feeling. The whole opening scene was very Mayor of Easttown. You know what I mean? It was just like, oh man, what is going on here? This is kind of cool. But I like that they are playing off of a kind of like a, whoa, is this WandaVision again? Next week, are we going to get a different true crime show? What's going to be the week after that? And I'm glad they didn't stay in there that long, right? But I am glad they decided to do something of the idea of uncovering what's going on with Agnes in this sense. What's going on with Agnes, and why is she a cop? Like, I like how they make us ask questions kind of similar to how we did in WandaVision. Why is Wanda in the 1950s? Why is she in the 1960s? And here we're like, why is Agnes, or in our minds, we should have been Agatha, but we're asking those same questions. Why is her name Agnes? Why is she a detective? Wait, I think I know that guy. Wasn't that her neighbor? Wasn't it their neighbor during WandaVision in Eastview and all these things? I like having to ask those questions while kind of simultaneously answering them on my own myself. So I thought it was a cool start to the episode.
Yeah, it's a really good way to tie that connective tissue between this series and the series that it's essentially birthed from. And I do appreciate and love the fact that we don't drag it out. It's not going to be a week to week
Mm-hmm.
thing. It's just like a
Exactly.
nice way to reintroduce the character, remind you like, oh yes, that was a convention, a structural convention that they used for that particular series, which Agatha created herself. That was her way of entrapping Wanda, essentially from a week
Mm-hmm.
to week perspective. And so Wanda's sort of returning the favor to her. And I think it would also make sense because Wanda not only grew up with those sitcoms that she ultimately lived throughout, but she's also like an adult. And, maybe in her free time when she's not like casting spells and reading out of the Book of the Damned. Maybe she is catching like an episode of Mayor of Easttown. I don't know. Kate Winslet might
Yeah,
be her favorite actress. You never know. And
could
so
be.
that's a I think an appropriate way to get us up to speed to a more modern convention of what television is now. And so I thought it was a nice change of pace, and they recreated that feel and that tone, I think, pretty successfully. Even with the dialogue, it's very on the nose, like most true crime detective noir style, modern day series. They very much lean into the idea that the town is really the
Mhm.
mystery. There's years and years of history, and there's all sorts of things that have been underneath the surface that are now newly discovered, and that's really the mystery. It's not basically one person or a particular crime. It's massive corruption on a bigger scale. So they did all of that stuff, I think, really well here. I also want to talk about Aubrey Plaza and her character here, because we saw a lot of her in episode 1, and she is appearing to be sort of the big bad of the series. She is known as Rio, and she comes in and has a big massive action set piece with Agatha later in this first episode. They have a huge fight sequence, and she has some sort of beef with Agatha that we don't really get too much insight into what's going on here, but we do feel her presence certainly in these opening moments of this episode and throughout the later moments. And again, it's appearing that she's going to be the overarching big bad. But what did you think about, sort of Aubrey Plaza's introduction here? The fact that we do see her as early as we do, and also the
Mhm.
fact that they sort of reserved and held at bay what the ultimate motivation is behind her, why she does have this beef with Agatha, or so it seems, as we'll probably come to learn to find out over the next few weeks.
Yeah, I was like, I was surprised to see her so early. I'll say that. I was like, oh shoot, she's here already. Hello, Aubrey Plaza. But it was very welcoming, I think, to see her. And again, I still like how they used her within that the detective show in Agatha's mind, to for her to be like, yeah, I'm around. Do you know who I am? Do you remember me? Or getting using Aubrey Plaza's character Rio to get her out of that kind of one of the people to help her kind of get out of that spell to figure out what's going on. The beef that they have, I'm very interested. It seems like it sounds like a love story. I don't know what it is, but there's definitely some tension going on there. It's so far it very much seems like Agatha all along could be like the gayest Disney Plus show we have, or even Disney MCU property we might have here thus far. But I don't know if they're going to go that direction. But it definitely seemed and felt like it. I do think Rio is a character that hasn't completely been revealed yet. I will say that. Of course, we don't know everything about her. That's not what I'm saying. That's the obvious. But I think there's even like a character they're going to be like, oh, that's who she is. We're going to be like, oh, that makes a ton of sense. I do feel like there's a reveal coming there. But man, I was really happy to see Aubrey Plaza. And I like the action sequence. I thought they did what they needed to do.
I doubt it's going to be that gay, considering what we just talked about with Pixar. It seems like they
Right.
will
No, really though.
they'll avoid that, or they'll just do like very surface level things. But maybe there is something there. Maybe there is like something a little bit more intimate and romantic. That would be interesting. It would be more interesting than like, you killed my sister and now I need revenge.
Yeah.
That would just be something that's
Yeah.
like completely predictable. But if it is like something born out of like maybe a strong rooted friendship, or even like to
Mhm.
to another degree like an actual relationship, that would be interesting. But there's obviously like years of shared history between the two, because the character of Rio like has it out for her. Like Arby Plaza was, I think, terrific in the stuff that she had to work with, and it was a great way to just like introduce the foil to what this whole thing is going to be, and make her very convincing and very formidable against Agatha, which is going to sort of act, I think, for the time being, as sort of the B plot, while the A plot is this whole witch's road thing that they're going to be
Mhm.
sort of undertaking. But it was a good introduction. It's somewhat unusual too, just because these shows don't tend to reveal that hand as early
Mhm.
as we've seen now. And I think that that's also like a pleasant surprise, to where we don't have to worry week to week or wonder like, oh yeah, where's Arby Plaza again? She's supposed to be in this show. It's like, no, we've already seen her. And I think one of the trappings of those earlier shows, it's like, well, when is so and so showing up? When are we gonna find out? Like, we know that this is the villain, or we
Mhm.
know that this character's coming. Like, why are they holding off on that stuff for so long? And I think they're just kind of getting to it and really just like hitting the ground running. So that was a pleasant surprise. Moving to or to episode 2, I should say. Really, the focus of it was mostly Agatha going around to find this new coven of witches. Essentially, she unites with this character called the Teen. We don't know his real name; he's just called the Teen. But she basically goes to find this coven of witches because they need to create this portal to open the witch's road, and ultimately Agatha needs to do this in order to get her full powers back. And so really the whole episode is her going around to these different characters, Lilia, Jennifer, Alice. They all have their own reasons that they need to walk the road. But that was really kind of the focus of episode 2. What did you think about just that sort of structure of meeting all of these new characters that sort of round out what's going to be the smaller sort of ensemble piece that we sort of expect the show to be, and to see these different witches, their different personalities, how they interact with each other, and then their ultimate motivations for having to go on this journey alongside Agatha over the next few weeks.
I enjoyed it. I always like a good team up, right? Of course. I mean, that's what superheroes are now. But in this realm, in the world of witches, it was interesting. I think to go one to say, hey, these aren't like everybody's not Agatha Harkness. Everybody's not the Scarlet Witch. Sometimes there's witches in your back door, and they practice different ways and different things. I loved that they kind of slid in that small piece of lore for these different kind of witches that they were going to start recruiting. I thought that was a really cool idea. I think for them to be like, hey, yo, she's trapped. She's a witch, but she can't go nowhere because of these reasons. Wait, Mrs. Hart loves plants. Low key, she might be an earth witch. She might not know it, but Mrs. Hart might be an earth witch. So I love that they were able, again, to just kind of put together this ragtag team of witches it isn't exactly favorable, but could get the job done. I thought that was pretty cool. Again, like you talked about how Disney this show is, that it felt very Disney. A lot of this episode did feel hocus pocusy, but of course there's also a lot of this show pulling just all kind of different witch things in it. And I think it made for a fun episode. There's a lot of there's a lot of witch things in it. A lot of it felt Wizard of Oz, a lot of it felt hocus pocus, a lot of it felt the craft, even a lot of it's just like, what is going on here? So I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, the specialties in particular is a nice touch too. That they all have their own sort of focused areas. Like there's a potion sort of master, the plants, earth based stuff. Like that's cool to just like open up and again do even more character building and world building to just show how diverse witches can be, and how they all have their own different specialties. And I also like the fact that Agatha, she has a reputation. She's
Mhm.
known in these parts. She's known as a witch killer. And it's
Crazy.
really really hard to trust her because it's like, you're gonna betray me and backstab me. Why would I trust you? Why would I go
Mhm.
on this journey? And because of that, I do think that the second episode did feel like a bit rushed, like we were moving pretty
Mhm.
quickly and it didn't take much convincing to get this coven together. I was like, oh, that probably would take a little bit more time, because I would imagine all of these women would be very reluctant to work alongside you. So that's a nitpick, but it is something that I did notice. But ultimately, again, it does create a fun dynamic. Again, the fact that we're kind of just getting to it, like we don't need 4 episodes to build this up. I think maybe just a little bit more time in this particular episode could have worked, but we don't need to drag this out over the course of multiple weeks. Like, let's get them together because we got a lot of other shit to get to. So it does feel like that this show, this series as a whole, is going to move at a pretty momentous clip. Like, it's going to move at a pretty steady pace. I hope that they keep that up, because one
Mhm.
thing that I found is a weakness with these Disney Plus series, it's like you don't need even 6 episodes because you don't have 6 episodes of material, or you don't have
Mm.
9 episodes of material. And based on these first two, it feels like that they actually do, that they have a story to tell that can really last over the course of the next 7 or 8 weeks or so. And also, I think that's compounded by the fact that both episodes were about 45 minutes in length. I did not expect that.
Mhm.
I thought coming into this that they were going to be like 28 minutes, 29 minutes. Like, I was just kind of
Yeah.
expecting that really short form stuff that they've been doing, but 45 minutes it's solid for 9 episodes. And so, yeah, we're moving along at a good pace. And the fact that she got this coven together, and we get to this like really cool sequence towards the end of episode 2 when they are ultimately able to open up this portal to the witch's road. We get this really cool this song, this ritual that they have to perform. Now, they did tease this sort of a couple of weeks ago at Disney D23, at the D23 Expo. They
Mhm.
they performed this live, but to now see it within the context of the show and the story, what did you think about just that Witch's Road song that they needed to perform together, that ritual that they had to do in order to open up the Witch's Road?
It's pretty cool, man. I think it's a song that we're gonna hear over the course of the show. I could imagine. I mean, she was humming it in the first episode, and they were singing the hell out of it in this episode. I just think it's cool. I think to sometimes have a song you can rally behind, is to give you something to hold on to. Even thinking about WandaVision, when the Agatha song came out, everybody was singing it. You know what I mean? It was like, oh, this is a cool song. So I love that. Maybe there's a new song for us to hold on to for the rest of this show. I'm like, yeah, I love when people are able to make associations like that. And I think, I think they could continue to use the song in interesting ways. Maybe we'll hear it in the background and they'll change it a little bit in a different, darker tone at some point. But yeah, I think it's cool. Again, that's one of the things that feels very Wizard of Oz, right? It's like the yellow brick road, and it's the road, and the witches road, and there's witches and Wizard of Oz, and it's like, I don't know. I think it's smart the way they're doing it, and hopefully they can continue to play and use it in all the right ways.
It would have been a huge missed opportunity if they didn't include music in this. I think people would have been
Yeah,
like, "You have witches but no music? That doesn't
no,
make
no way.
any sense." After things like Wizard of Oz and Hocus Pocus, which has
Mm-hmm.
a number of very memorable music numbers, and so yeah, it was cool. I think it was a cool touch, and it adds to the spooky nature of this whole thing and the lore and the mythology that this is something that's like thousands of years old. This is
Mm-hmm.
predating really what we contextualize as probably just regular human history, and I love that. And it's also like it's just so interesting, like how things develop again over the course of us watching the MCU. I remember in the first Thor movie, we
Mm-hmm.
classified magic as science. Thor said like what you all consider magic is just science for us, and it made sense at the time because who would have thought that in 15 years we would be having a show about witches in particular. But I think
Right.
now that we have like fully really leaned and embraced more comic book material, and we're really getting deeper and deeper into these characters, now it's just like, no, magic is magic, like that's all it
Magic
is.
is
there,
magic.
there, there
Yeah.
is there is no scientific explanation for magic. Like this shit cannot be
Mm-hmm.
explained. It is indeed supernatural, and that's what the show is all about. Like this is
Mm-hmm.
beyond us, and so I'm loving that they're leaning into that fantastical element of the series and leaning more into that. So as we wrap up with Agatha here, what are your just I guess expectations as we move towards the next episodes, the next few weeks? I believe that this is a quote unquote limited series. I don't think that this is necessarily going to be
Mm-hmm.
something that goes on for multiple seasons. And so if this is sort of the temporary final statement on the Agatha character until we probably see her again in some other capacity, what do you hope that this series
Mm-hmm.
can achieve over the course of the next few weeks?
I think I think they started with the detective stuff for a reason. I think there is a witchy mystery here, and for things are going to be revealed, and people are going to figure things out, and Agatha's probably going to betray some people. Some people might betray her, and like now that they formed this coven of witches, I'm curious to see if they can actually get along. But I want to see some more of that Salem 7. That Salem 7 was scary. You know what I'm saying? So I'm hoping they can continue to make the that feel for the Salem 7 as real adversaries. Make them scary. Make these witches who probably don't like each other, clearly don't like each other, come together and have to overcome something, but make it feel good. Continue to make it witchy, continue to make it campy, because it's definitely campy. But I think leaning into all those things and having balance for all those things will make for an interesting show. And when all these reveals come out, it won't just be revealed. We'll be like, oh my god, I can't believe that's a thing. Like, give us some meat, give us some potatoes, and I think this will be a worthwhile show.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add. I would mostly agree with all of that. I think what I'm interested to see. I don't know if this is going to be a thing or not, but what I am interested to see, I think it's just like a reoccurring thing with any new Disney Marvel property. Is there any, I guess, accessibility into the rest of the larger universe that the show is going to have? Is there any tie-ins whatsoever? And I'm not looking for any direct tie-ins. Like I don't need this to lead into Secret Wars.
Right.
Like I'm not expecting that, but because we are opening up this corner of
Mhm.
the MCU now, like we're fully diving into this, what does that mean and what can that imply for future projects and
Mhm.
potentially future characters that can be introduced? And again, I'm not asking for the world, I'm not asking for new character introductions, but I do hope and anticipate that this can maybe set the ground work for some of those other interesting aspects that can sort of come into play into the future. Like maybe in the long run, years and years from now, once they properly develop this, could this inform Midnight Suns, right? Could this
Mhm.
particular corner of the universe inform what that might look like?
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see if we can tie in some of that DNA that they're establishing here into a future property, into a future series, movie, whatever it may be. And so I'm
Mhm.
I'm curious to see what that might look like. We probably won't know those answers by the time we get to the finale, but I think that if it's a successful show and we can look at the world that they build and what they introduce here, we can look back and say, like, there's actually more that they can do. Even if it's not like a sequel series to this can
Mhm.
obviously continue on in some form or fashion down the line with another character or another property. So hopefully that's the case. One more quick question before we move on, though. Do you anticipate or expect that we'll see Elizabeth Olsen return as Wanda Maximoff in any form or fashion in the series?
I think that'll be like a last episode teaser somehow. I don't think it'll be. I don't think she'll be a prominent role in the show or anything. I think this will really be Agatha Harkness's own adventure. I think there'll be remnants of Wanda, but it's like PTSD remnants. Like, why are you here? What is this thing? Similar to how we'll be seeing in episode 1. But I imagine if we see anything from Wanda, it'll either be again a callback to her for story purposes, or it'll be just something at the very end of the show that will be like, oh shoot, that might be Wanda. I don't think we'll see her at all.
It'll probably be as tiny as
Hmm.
Wanda Maximoff will return, like that end
Yeah.
bumper that they usually include on films. I wouldn't be thrown off or surprised if that happens. If when this show concludes and wraps up, there's some sort of post credit stinger. We go to where was it that she died in Doctor Strange? If we go to that tomb and
Hmm.
we see like a hand rise out of a grave or something like
Right.
that, anything like that, I think that we probably will get
Another
like a
red.
small tease. Yeah, something like a red
Another
flash.
red flash. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I agree. I don't think she'll have a big presence. I don't think we'll see Elizabeth Olsen pop up per se, but they probably will tip us off and give us an indication that she's going to return, whether it's in her own movie or one of the Avengers movies, something of that sort. That's kind of what I'm
Hmm.
expecting. But folks, those are all of our thoughts on the 2-episode premiere of Marvel Studios' new Disney Plus series, Agatha All Along. If you've checked out these 2 episodes, definitely hit us up and let us know what you think.